Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Andrew Donovan. A planned but averted mass shooting at Clinton Middle School is the most serious the Oneida County Sheriff has ever seen in his long career. Joining us to talk about everything that's happened there is the Sheriff, Rob Maciol, the Sheriff of Oneida County. Sheriff Maciol, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for making the drive from Utica.
Yeah, no, it's always good to get out to get some fresh air.
Well, you know, we have a guest here every single week, but I can't think of one that I've known longer than perhaps you.
Yeah.
We go back before you were sheriff and before I was on television every day. So.
You were one of my students. I was a DARE officer. I was actually a school resource officer before there were school resource officers. I think you were probably 11 years old when you were in my classroom in 6th grade. So
yeah.
That's, no, I've known you for a long time.
And then you eventually were elected sheriff of Oneida County, and you've had that job 15 years?
Yeah, I'm on year 16 right now, and it's been a ride. Probably one of the most amazing jobs that anyone could ever have. I always tell people I have the best job in the world. Extremely stressful at times, extremely rewarding at times, but without a doubt, there's not one day that's like the one before it. And I think that's what I love about my career. I've been a police officer for 37 years total. And yeah, this topic that we're going to talk about today is something that definitely is the scariest thing I've seen when it comes to this category.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are you doing after what I bet has been a traumatic episode for you and your team?
You know, we train for things like this. We talk about these things. We go to different training classes, and you know, we see things happening around the country. And I don't think anyone ever thinks these things could happen in their own backyard. But I can't say enough about the men and women at the sheriff's office. From the moment that call came in, but just before 2 a.m. on that Saturday morning, Friday night into Saturday morning, from the first responding deputies to the forensics people to the investigators to all of our school-related officials or school-related officers, they gave it 110%. And like I said, they did an amazing job. Truly dedicated police officers. Can't say enough about the school district. Extremely cooperative with us. They should be, and they were, but my point is, some districts, you know, we've heard stories in other areas where some districts aren't always cooperative with law enforcement, which would make our job a little more difficult. And the same thing for the parents involved here. This call initiated from a parent, but even throughout the investigation, the parents were extremely cooperative, and that made our job a little bit easier. They could have put up roadblocks, and not one of them did. So.
As you sit here today, what is the status of the safety of the Clinton School District and all of the schools in Oneida County?
So that call came in on a Saturday morning, like I said, Friday night into Saturday morning, which gave us the entire weekend. School was in session that following Monday. We were 100% sure that the school was safe, that the children were safe to go back to school. You know, I'm a dad, my kids are grown up, but I'm also a grandpa. My wife works in a school. Every single one of the members of the sheriff's office that worked on this case had kids in schools. You know, we told them it's safe to go. And, you know, I know some people were concerned about that decision. That's a decision the school makes, but we supported them 100% in that decision.
You mentioned this came in around 2 in the morning, yeah. First couple hours into that Saturday.
Yes.
So Friday midnight hits, now it's 2 a.m. Saturday.
A parent finds out that their child, an uninvolved child, to the people charged or to the kids charged in this case, a parent finds out that their child was part of viewing a Snapchat conversation, a group chat. That parent saw what was in the conversation, was alarmed enough to call 911.
But clearly the child was alarmed enough to tell their parent.
That is correct. That is correct. So sure, the credit goes to the child for bringing this to the parent's attention. Parent, I give them credit because they're parenting. A lot of times today we see parents that don't parent. They want to be their child's friend. So the parent called 911. The first responding deputies went and interviewed that individual, that child. That led them to another home of one of the suspects. Through, again, I'll summarize here, but an interview was conducted. As a result of that interview, as a result of what the deputy saw at the house, as a result of some other things, that child was taken for a mental health evaluation. That also led them to a second suspect's home. another female. First one was a female. Second one is also a female. Basically a very similar scenario. A lot of information was gathered, which substantiated that there was a potential school threat. That child, due to the circumstances of what the deputy found there, that child was also taken for a mental health evaluation. The third individual that came up in this investigation was a male. That male is the one that had weapons at their home where they lived. Those were the weapons that would have been used in this alleged plan that they were putting together. So through all of that, those three individuals initially, initially were charged. The two girls were charged with planning this school threat or school mass shooting. The third individual, the boy, was charged with conspiracy, which is a felony. Again, we're talking 13 and 14-year-olds, and it gets complicated because we have juvenile offenders or adolescent offenders, juvenile delinquents, all these different terminologies when we're talking about kids anywhere from age 17 and down. So depending on where we land on these, but we're talking strictly 13 and 14-year-olds. But the boy was the one who would have supplied the weapons. That's where the conspiracy charge comes from. The girl's plan was spelled out in great detail, which was extremely concerning and scary for us. Our investigation, we've had a lot of interviews, a lot of leads, but it's the same core individuals who were planning this mass shooting.
I know this gets a little uncomfortable because through court records and paperwork that was released, it lists a lot of evidence that was available to your team that you probably yourself would never even acknowledge exists, but it has been reported. It talks about the diary that this girl had. I mean, there was clearly enough there that this seems like it was planned and moving toward actionable.
That is correct. Now, the question is, and the question we get all the time, would this have happened? We don't know the answer to that. We'll never know the answer to that. Would they have chickened out before it was going to take place? The sheriff's office has a presence in nearly every single school district in Oneida County with either SROs or SPOs, sworn members, armed members of the sheriff's office. The ones in particular at Clinton Central School are very well seasoned. They're extremely good guys. I'm confident that a weapon, if was ever brought to that campus, would have never gotten into that campus. Sadly, we don't know how that would have played out, but certainly wouldn't want to have to deal with that. And then obviously if they ever did enter the building with weapons, with their plan, we'd be talking about a whole different thing here. So I thank God that it played out the way it played out, because we'd be having a much different conversation right now, no matter how it went.
Yeah. All right, we'll take our first break. More with the Oneida County Sheriff when Newsmakers continues. Newsmakers is back. We have the Oneida County Sheriff from Utica, who is gracious enough to hit the thruway and come see us in Syracuse for, I think, your first appearance on Newsmakers, at least since I've done it. But you're here talking about this very serious situation that you averted at Clinton Middle School. You went through the kind of the play-by-play. Where does the investigation stand today?
So as of right now, the two girls have been charged with planning the mass shooting.
Are they out of the hospital?
They are currently receiving inpatient services. That's all I can say. I'm not going to disclose the location, but so they're not out in the community, because I know that's a question we've received multiple times from people. The boy who was charged with the felony conspiracy, he, because of his age and because of the qualifying offense, he had to be issued an appearance ticket. So he will appear at a later date in Oneida County probation, which will see its path if it ends up in actual, family court or not. But additional charges will be filed against the girls. But we can't do that at the moment because you've got two systems working here. You've got the juvenile justice system, and you've also got the mental health system. So they're both running parallel, basically. So they will be charged at a future time. It's just not yet determined when. But as like I said, currently they are not out in the community. The 14-year-old boy is, and he's not in school. None of them are in school. None of them are allowed to be at school. But he is home awaiting his first appearance. That's the system. I mean, and that's not, I've had people ask me, is that because of Raise the Age? It is absolutely not because of Raise the Age. It was like that before Raise the Age, and it's still the same today. It's because we're dealing with such young kids here. I mean, 13 and 14. And as serious as the charges are, they can't be charged as an adult just because they don't reach that threshold.
Is there any kind of supervision of someone who's out in the community but charged with this, like in this case, the boy?
At this point, no. Other than the guardian who's, and they've been, again, cooperative in communicating with my office regularly. But at some point, that may become part of a consequence, yeah.
Have you determined what the additional charges will be against the females?
It'll be the conspiracy, yeah, that the boy was charged with, because, again, he was part of the plan. Even though he wasn't going to be involved in it, he was potentially was going to supply the weapon. So
all three will be charged with conspiracy, and the two girls have the additional charge already against
planning
them.
the threat. Okay. Yes.
The boy, what kind of access did he have to weapons? Were they just in the house and locked up and
they
safely
were
away?
Legally possessed, secured firearms. Again, not going into great detail. And I also want to stress that all of these juveniles had no firearm experience. So again, that goes into the original question we talked about in the last segment. How far could this plan have been taken out? We don't know. But they were in the home and no longer. They're all in the sheriff's office possession. There are no guns in any of the homes of the people involved in this investigation. That's another question we get all the time. Are there more guns? And there are not. They're all secured at our office.
You mentioned the guns were secured in that house. Could he have gotten to them? Or was it up to the guardian to have unlocked it?
In most homes, and I'll even use my home as a, there are things that are locked and secured, but my children, well, they don't live there anymore, but when they were home, they lived there their whole life. So they know the process, and so, but again, I wouldn't have to worry about that with my kids because it's obviously brought up in a different setting, me being in law enforcement my whole career,
You talk about the balance of the mental health system and the juvenile justice system, acknowledging the age of these children. And the reason that system exists is because there's a general argument that these kids perhaps weren't old enough to know that they were making a life-altering decision, which sounds ridiculous, but that's the way that the system allows them to have a few more years before they would be held at the same consequence as an adult. And I guess what I'm trying to say is anyone feeling for these kids that they were under such mental health crisis? I mean, what hits me is what the girl wrote in her diary. Quote, "I'm actually considering doing a massacre at my school. It will be really big, and I think I could actually get a few good hits. No one would be spared, though." That's an alarming statement.
Sure is.
Made by a girl. You have to wonder how she got to a point where that's what she was writing.
And again, I don't want to get into the specific juveniles involved in this, but the youth in the American society today, there are many youth that are in crisis. It's not the same as when I was a kid. It's not the same as when you were a kid growing up. Kids today are dealing with a lot of different things. I blame a lot of it on social media. I blame a lot of it on these electronic devices, and certainly that's not the sole responsibility, because that device can also be their best friend, but it can also be their worst enemy. But and many times people mention bullying. I mean, we're not denying that there's bullying out in children's lives today all across the country, but we also have to realize, get the true definition of what bullying is too. And in the old days, if a child was, let's say, bullied in school, when they went home or they left school, the bullying stopped. Now I'm not getting into the specifics on this case. I'm just talking about kids that are bullied in general. With electronic devices today, that bullying never stops. It's 24 hours a day. I don't care which media platform they're on. If they look at something, they are people are, not just kids, but adults are getting, those that are, facing harassment or workplace violence or things like that. It's nonstop. It doesn't leave, you know what I mean? A lot of kids, like in the younger years, or several years ago, they would go home and the bullying would stop because they're not near those kids who are bullying them. Today, that doesn't happen, and I think that's a huge part of it. But I mean, we have youth who need, when kids make destructive decisions like this, we use this as an example, and in the case, or any juvenile, when they're charged with a serious crime, in New York, we have a significant lack of secure beds in detention facilities, significant. That's a crisis in itself. So many times these juveniles will be placed into an emergency room at a hospital because they're the initial intake for any mental health cases. If there's no secure bed to put them in, they get stuck in an emergency room. Where if they were in a detention facility designed for kids who are going through the things that they're going through, they'd be receiving services, whatever specific services they need. Well, in an emergency room, they're not. They're not getting any of those services. They're actually they're taking up space in beds that people in medical trauma may need. And even on the flip side, the older juveniles, the 16 and 17-year-olds, those are adolescent offenders. When there's no beds available for them, I'm one of the 5 correctional facilities in the state that can actually temporarily house adolescent offenders, 16 and 17-year-olds, when charged with a crime when there's no beds available. We have them with us, and they're with us for weeks and months at a time, but we don't specialize in youth mental health services, so they're just, we're failing them at the same time is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, the mental health, the youth, they're in crisis a lot here, because of the lack of services for children.
A lot of this conversation came up. You were invited to Albany by an assembly member in light of what happened at Clinton Middle School, and
Yes.
you had this conversation with members of the state legislature.
Absolutely, and this was very recent, just a few days ago. We met with, it was Assemblywoman Buttonshaw, who represents Oneida County. She called for this meeting, but she had the chair of the Education Committee, she had the chair of the Office of Mental Health, she had the chairperson for the Office of Family and Children Services. She had several other chairs there, along with deputy commissioners from the various state departments. I was there, one of our family court judges, our mental health commissioner from Oneida County, and our probation director. And we're basically telling them, pleading with them that we, just like every other county in this state, we need help. We need secure detention facilities for these kids. These kids need services. I mean, we just opened up an awesome clinic in Utica, New York, just for people who may not meet the threshold of going in for a mental health evaluation, a full-blown one, but it's a stabilization center, which is available 24 hours a day to us. So that's a great opportunity, but we need so much more. I mean, that's just a baby step. I mean, we currently have juveniles of various ages housed all around the state of New York, and we have some that are receiving services outside of New York. I mean, that's crazy. They're New York's kids. New York needs to do a much better job of helping their kids that are going through crisis.
That's a state funding problem?
That is a state funding and states, yes. Okay. We have the people that want to deliver, but there's also a lack of many professionals too. The lack of, in the whole country, from what I'm being told, the lack of child psychiatrists. They just don't exist anymore. And when a child needs professional help and there's no one to help them, we're failing that child.
All right, we'll take another break. More with the Oneida County Sheriff after this. The Oneida County Sheriff continues as our guest. Sheriff, I want to read what the Clinton superintendent, a piece of what he put out to the district. Quote, some students shared concerns about how others may now view our school and our school community. That feeling is understandable, but I want to say this clearly. This moment does not define Clinton. What will define us are the students who spoke up, the families who took action, and a community that came together to protect one another. Hearing that, how would you say Clinton is doing as a community?
They're doing very well. I have had more conversations with the superintendent from Clinton in the past few days than I've the entire time he's been the superintendent. It's a great community. I mean, we spend a lot of time there. not only have we had a law enforcement presence in this Clinton School District for several years, we also recently, 2 years ago, signed an agreement with the Village of Clinton. We provide dedicated police services with a deputy sheriff assigned to the Village of Clinton every single day. So it's a great little community. I mean, we've had a family tradition since I was a little guy, going to Clinton on the Friday after Thanksgiving, and for the parade and the shopping. It's a great little community. So I mean, they'll get through this. It was a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people in a lot of school districts. I think they're going to change some of their security policies, just to tighten up a few things. I know they've gotten a lot of recommendations from various people. I think this is a wake-up call for all the school districts in the county to let's make sure that everything's in place should we have to deal with something like this. And I think it's a wake-up call to parents. I mean, I've said this, I can't even tell you how many times. If you see something, say something. You know, we talk about domestic violence or animal abuse or anything, and certainly when it comes to school violence, if you see something, say something. You can say it officially, you can say it unofficially, you can say it anonymously. I don't care how you say it, but we can't be everywhere, and we need the community to work with us. And like I said, everybody involved in this from A to Z was extremely cooperative, and I'm grateful and I'm very, very thankful to them for that.
All right, a final word after this. With our final seconds with the Oneida County Sheriff, I just want to say thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for making the drive. Thank you for a lifetime of service to our shared home county.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, that does it for Newsmakers. For all the hardworking people of News Channel 9, have a great weekend.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.